Bartholomew Town is brought to you in part by the University of Rhode Island Online, Navigant Credit Union, the Audubon Society of Rhode Island, Newport Film, and Half Street Group.
Bartholomew Town.
Continuing to spotlight some of the screenings that are taking place via Newport Film. Of course, newportfilm.com is where you can find pretty much everything you'd want to know about, all the details there. And you'll hear, of course, also here on the podcast, we bring you updates on locations, so on and so forth. But this film right here is amazing. And it's the intersection of, for me, and the listeners to the show will know that this is the intersection of a couple of my worlds, which is one, obviously geopolitics, but also as a vegan animal lover, this just spoke to my heart. So Josh, I guess if you want to introduce yourself and let's talk about Checkpoint Zoo, which is an incredible documentary.
Oh, thank you. My name is Joshua Zeman. I'm the director of Checkpoint Zoo. And this is a film that basically profiles 5,000, the rescue of 5,000 animals from a zoo in Ukraine by a bunch of volunteers.
That is the executive summary. That's exactly what it is. And within this is obviously a great deal of storytelling, but it also leaves questions that are so pertinent right now for so many of us as we take a look at just how do we build the world we want to live in? What is the world we want to be a part of look like on so many different levels, geopolitically, in terms of also our relationship with animals? How did you get involved in this project? What drew you in? And sort of with that thesis in mind, how big of a story is this? And in a moment right now where there just seems to be so much hopelessness in everything that we talk about.
It's really tragic. I mean, I don't know how I do know how we got here, but the chill that's over us right now is really depressing a lot of people. This film, interestingly enough, I originally did a film called The Loneliest Whale. That was about the search for the 52 hertz whale, a whale that theoretically calls out at a different frequency from any other whale that swims through the oceans and calls out looking for a mate, and no other whale can hear him. I did that movie, and I had the great fortune of playing that film at Newport Film. It was a wonderful experience. But just making documentaries about animals is such an interesting thing. It's the power of storytelling and animals is so strong. And I hadn't even recognized that as a filmmaker until I made this film. And then I was like, okay, let's make another film about animals, but from a unique perspective. I had read an article in the New York Times about a chimp that had escaped from a zoo in Kharkiv. And this chimp had come from another zoo that had been horrifically bombed called Feldman Eco Park. And it was staying temporarily at this other zoo, and it had escaped. And it was going through the middle of what's known as Freedom Square in the city of Kharkiv. And it was just right there on the page. Here's this chimp looking for its freedom in the middle of this war in Ukraine, while the Ukrainian people are looking for their freedom. And it was that juxtaposition of those two stories. But it was also, there was a piece of video that I had seen about this story, and it was the faces of the Ukrainian people seeing this chimpanzee walk through the middle of Freedom Square. They had been totally depressed and terrified for months during the bombing campaign, and suddenly they saw this chimpanzee, and you could see the smiles on their faces, and it was this. That's the power of animal stories, to kind of pull us out of exactly what we're talking about, these really depressing times. It's the compassion, it's seeing another animal, it's seeing another species. And that's, again, the power of animals and this story.
Completely agree 100% with that, with your assessment there, and also obviously with the facts that you lay out. But I think right now, I mean, a film such as yours, it goes beyond interesting or a scene setter for distraction or entertainment. It really poses questions about the future of and survival of the species and I keep saying this, but what we want our world to be. What kind of reaction have you gotten on sort of that esoteric level, on sort of that philosophical level of Not just, hey, that's a great story and you told it well, but that story maybe even reprograms the brain to have a different lens at assessing the world with either more optimism, more pragmatism, more compassion. What have you heard?
That is actually a really great question. So war, by definition, is designed to strip away, via its brutality, our own humanity. And that could be the Ukraine war, or that could be the larger war that we're currently in, theoretically, this psi war, if you will. We are in a world right now that is stripping away our kindness, that is stripping away our dignity by turning each other against us. And what's so interesting is that, at least for these Ukrainian people in this story, they had their humanity stripped away by the brutality of the war that's going on around them. They managed, via saving animals, a different species, to reconnect with their own humanity. And I think that message of what those people experienced, we are experiencing it. A lot of people are experiencing it when they see this film. They start to bawl. The tears come, or it's this life-affirming redefinition of compassion, selflessness, empathy that seems to be missing in the world that's around us, whether that's because of the internet or because of politics or because of geopolitical politics. We are really not in a very loving space. And so when they watch this film about people saving animals, it really speaks to them in a hardcore way.
Yeah, so well said. It's true. We're not in a loving space at all. And one of the solutions to where we're at right now, in addition to pragmatic and practical application of diplomacy and climate resiliency, all of these types of things, is just raising the level of consciousness in the world. And people need tools for that. At one point, it may have been purely based on religion. It may have been purely based on community central or community centric conversations. And now people need to have a lens into humanity, into compassion, to remind themselves of, hey, way back when the Big Bang happened, or whatever took place before that, however we got here, all that dust is still settling, and that's what makes up your soul. So a film like Checkpoint Zoo, it tickles that dust. It's like when you turn on an old TV and the static's moving. It still resonates inside every human being. That's the real pathway forward, and that's the art and the magic behind the storytelling of this film.
Yeah. We were just very lucky, these kids who decided to go risk their lives literally every single day to pull out 5,000 animals from a zoo that had been trapped behind enemy lines. There were bombs falling all around them, and they were going out and they were saving these animals. And it was that selflessness. And I think, you're right. There's this thing going on, again, a lot of people say, if I look at it from the Loneliest Whale standpoint, which is also about the internet, the internet atomizes us. It pulls us apart. There is obviously a lack of community. There is obviously a lack of compassion that's coming down from our leaders right now. We're all just fighting. So, we need examples of how to be. Our children need examples of how to act. That's what we're missing right now. We're missing, again, and we can't say it enough right now. We are missing compassion. We are missing empathy. We are missing selflessness.
What's next for you in terms of, obviously, filmmakers oftentimes juggling a lot of different projects, but I mean, this, in addition to the screening at Newport Film, what other plans do you have for Checkpoint Zoo, and then how does making this film inform your career going forward?
As filmmakers, we always make films about things that are important to us going on in our life, and we may not know it as filmmakers, but we kind of do the film and you're like, oh, I was missing a little bit of community in my life, or I was missing some empathy. I had wanted to do a war film, but I also wanted to do a war film from a unique perspective. First of all, Newport Film is a great organization, by the way, and the fact that they, bring people together to show these films is really important. We've been very lucky. The film really seems to be resonating. Last week, we won the jury award at Annapolis Film Festival. We also won the audience award at the Salem Film Festival. Unfortunately, there are a lot of streamers or distributors who don't want to put films out about Ukraine because they are fearful of retribution. That is crazy, but true. Documentaries were supposed to be kind of the last bastion of freedom and, lack of censorship, but that is exactly what is happening now. So this film, unfortunately, kind of highlights the issues that many documentary filmmakers are facing. And just these stories are not getting out there because of censorship, if you will. So my goal is to keep showing this film. We are going to have our own theatrical campaign that we're raising money for to put it together so we can get this film out there so that we can show people how it is important to be empathetic and selfless and all those things that we are missing.
That's insane that we're at this point of censorship. And it's ironic because the people who have been screaming the loudest about being censored are now creating an environment where literally streamers, and it's not limited to documentary films. I mean, journalism writ large is suffering from this in so many ways, but and art as a whole is suffering in so many ways. We see it all the time, but for a documentary of this magnitude that taps into something so universal, for that to be viewed as controversial enough, or at least controversial enough where retribution's a possibility, it kind of comes full circle back to why a film like this is essential in these times. It's like it's a rat chasing its tail.
It is. I really honestly never thought I would be here in the time that we would be experiencing this kind of McCarthyism, but it is happening. Let's not kid ourselves as what is going on. This is systematic. It started with journalism. I am a journalist, documentary filmmaker, but it really starts with the erosion of journalism, and calling it enemies of the state. That is exactly where it starts. And you wouldn't think that it would have this sort of trickle-down effect, but it does. And so I'm worried about our kids. We know it's bad. We know what's going on, but will our children understand that it's going on? And is it going to, the other question is okay, let's say the administration shifts, but won't the effects of what has been put in place will still be felt for years and decades, and that is the problem.
Yeah, it's so wild. And part of my work is every day I'm on a radio show where we've got an element where people call in the afternoon. It's on a wide station that's heard from Boston down and through Connecticut. And every day you've got ordinary people, seemingly, how ordinary can you be if you're waiting around to call a talk radio show, but seemingly ordinary people call up and justify things like this as if it's, essential to save the quality of humanity, and they're able to rationalize it. And it's such a contradiction compared to the content, for example, the content of Checkpoint Zoo and what is exposed there and that's the pathway forward in, I think, my mind and so many people's mind. But in a segment of the population, they're willing to say, you know what, we can't take the risk, whether it's from the Ukraine standpoint or any other geopolitical conflict. I mean, obviously we see it all the time in Middle Eastern discussions, global South discussions. This censorship happens, but wouldn't getting closer to the world, your world, and your sense of humanity be the ultimate ticket towards finding a better world? And yet there's a segment of people that would see this film and they would say, well, did Joe Biden fund that? Did George Soros fund that? And it just exposes the insanity of the moment at a level that you never thought we'd get to.
Well, that's an interesting point. So as a filmmaker, to be honest, I don't like to make films that preach to the choir. Yep. Because that's just us having the same conversation over and over again. For me, the question is, can I change somebody else's mind who's not on the same wavelength as me. So that for me was animals. Animals was this unique kind of key, if you will, that would allow somebody who may have a political problem to put that political problem aside and say, well, listen, I have a cat. We have a dog. You know, we all have dogs. We all have cats. We love them. There's some of them for there are children. You know, can animals somehow, right? Animals don't have, you know, geopolitical conversations and censorship. You know, can this be the thing that allows people to kind of come together? That you could say that that's a little Pollyanna, but at the same time, maybe not. So that was where I was going for. We live in a crazy time. You know, fear, when we stoke the coals of fear, it unfortunately is not rational. So, yeah, it's strange. It is, and it's really depressing. So again, that's why I'm trying to put out stories. We need to put out stories right now that highlight the empathy and those things that we're missing. I think if we can do that, we can come to a better place. And, you know, it's so funny. I was listening to Freedom Rock like all weekend long. And I was like, like, I wonder where we're going to go. Are we going to start to pull this back around? You know, you listen to kind of the dialogue that the hippie quote unquote community was using about like everybody come together right now, or I'd like to change the world, but I don't know what to do. Those lines are suddenly having a lot more resonance than what they used to.
Yeah, completely agree. Checkpoint Zoo is the film. Newport Film screening it. NewportFilm.com for all the details. And thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Bill, thank you so much.
Hey, thanks for stopping by Bartholomew Town. For more content, follow me on Instagram @Bill Bartholomew.